I haven't seen it, but me personally, I'd rather get kicked in the face than dropped on my head.
Yeah. Well, in my way of thinking, I'm not taking either side. So, like Mikey, I haven't seen the footage, but to me, this goes back to what Mikey and I have been talking about for the last 20 minutes of, how Mikey sat and listened to Terry Funk tell a gibberish story for an hour and a half, out of respect and listening and along the way learning. The same thing with me. I was brought up in the business at a time that I was told to keep my mouth shut and my eyes and ears open, and did that. It seems today, as we see after we, waded into the Sammy brain fart.
Eddie Edwards.
And Eddie Edwards when he was supposed to hit the chair. And
right. That
me, in my way of thinking, if Mikey Whipwreck is laying there with a chair on his chest and I'm supposed to have the chair, it's not a question I'm going to try really hard not to miss. I cannot miss. You cannot miss. I cannot hit Mikey Whipwreck in the face with a baseball bat and say, gee whiz, afterwards, Mikey, I'm really sorry. So again, without having seen the footage, there's, obviously any kind of Twitter war when you see all the trolling shit going back and forth. I'm sure there's valid points on both sides. But I think in a nutshell, what was trying to be said was, and I'd said this before, is that we're seeing these injuries at an exponential rate. And injuries off of stuff that should be able to be done 25 times a night and not have an injury, and yet we're having injuries 27 times out of 25. Somewhere along the line, something has been lost in the way that we were all taught. Rule number one, you take care of your opponent. Now, does that mean that there's never going to be an accident? There's never going to be a slip? Of course not. But Kevin Sullivan, I had asked Kevin Sullivan this question about a year and a half ago on something completely unrelated. And I asked him how many matches he had, and he said, I just figured this out, and he said it was something like 30,000 matches over his career. And I said, in those 30,000 matches, how many times had you been injured seriously enough to the point that you could not make that night's match? And he said, one time. In my last match, a kid dropped me on my head and fucked my neck up, and I was unable to go on. So think about that. He had done something, and look at Kevin's style. Pretty violent, a little bit sloppy. So, did it 30,000 times and didn't get injured. And now we're seeing these injuries on like a seemingly rotational basis, like they're just part of the show now. And in ECW, as crazy as we were in ECW, there were injuries, no question about it. We all had injuries along the way. But when you boil it down to and extrapolate it down to the number of times that we took bumps and the number of times that we did these insane things in ECW, those injuries were very few and far between in comparison to the number of stunts or spots or big bumps that we took. And I don't know where that got lost at. Somewhere it's not important, I guess, or it doesn't matter if I dump Mikey on his head and fuck his neck up or kick him in the face or hit him in the face with a baseball bat. That does matter. It matters to me because I don't want to have to come back into the dressing room and see Mikey's orbital bone broken or some big gash on his face because I was careless and didn't give a shit. So I don't know. I have to go back and watch the footage as to what's being said. But, the big thing to me is like this whole thing with Twitter and all these social medias. So JP, Mikey, or Chad says something I don't like. So now me and my minions have to attack you. Because we didn't like what you said. So now we're going to have to destroy you.
That's right.
is anybody entitled to an opinion today? It's without having. I mean, here's the thing in the business that certainly has changed. We had to have thick skin back in my day, because if you didn't have thick skin, you wouldn't last a night in the dressing room. Now it seems like everybody's skin is so paper thin, tissue paper thin, that how dare you say something bad about me? And with all due respect, and what I read with Glenn saying, I didn't hear him attack Cody or anybody. He made a comment, and yet somehow that was taken as an umbrage to those listening to Kenny Omega or Cody Rhodes, and therefore we got to attack and we got to go to this low road to try to make fun of as we're making a point. I don't know. I mean, it just seems to me to be strange, and it's but that said, some of the things that Cody said were pretty funny, and
well, he's a funny guy.
So it's so it's all over the place. But Jesus, I can't imagine me having said something so overt to somebody, before me, say for instance, Tiger Conway Jr. At that time, he was on the downside of his career. I would never have in a million, and I'm not picking on Tiger, I'm just using him as an example at the top of my head. I wouldn't have said boo to Tiger Conway Jr. Why? Because he was an experienced vet above me and before me in the business. Whether he was right or wrong didn't matter. I sat and took the criticism and went on about my business. Just seems to me, as I read, the back and forth on the Twitter today, like I said, there were some comical things in there, but my takeaway was, like, how has the business gotten here? Where anybody can say, shoot anything they want, just go to the lowest common denominator. Your mother wears army boots. And,
wow.
That's my lowest common denominator, right? So, very, very strange, all of it. Very strange.
So what happened? Omega kicked Cody in the head? Is that what happened?
Yes. He left a big, a huge, scar. Almost looked like he got in an MMA fight or something. He got, wrecked or whatever. But he has this big scar on his face. So Disco put the kids today aren't safe and, things like that. You guys need to work a little bit safer. Let's not hurt each other. And then Cody jumped all over him.
Well, I mean, could have been they had a little bit of agreement to work snug, maybe hard way.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely they did.
Maybe a little more hard way than anticipated, but I don't know. I mean, we did it back in our day, hard way me, I guess, but I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I remember Vader with Cactus Jack, got him the hard way in WCW. Beck was looked very similar. That cut over the eye and cut open pretty bad.
Didn't Lesnar bust open Randy Orton?
Yes, for real. Yeah. Yep.
Now, was that like a work shoot type thing, or did he just
agreed upon spot in that? Yeah.
Was it on purpose though?
It was an agreed upon spot in the match. So I guess you could say it's somewhat of a work shoot. They acted like it was real, but Lesnar really cut open Randy Orton.
Well, this could be the same thing.
Yep.
Yeah, that is, if it's agreed upon, then there's no complaint. It's a little funny side story to that was I was working Candido. I believe it was an XPW, and for the first time in our career, the two triple threat members were working against each other, and we get out there and we get into it, and we're having a pretty good match, and I said to him, hard way me, and he starts punching, Chris, I don't even know how to throw a working punch, and so, come on, hard, and I got him so pissed off, he's literally punching me in the face, trying to bust me open, and he can't, and he goes, Jesus Christ, you got a head like a rock. And we go to the back. I walk up to him in the dressing room. I walk over, and he's sitting there. He's cussing up in a storm because he couldn't bust me open. I walk over, and boink, I hit him with one hit on the eyebrow. And he starts pouring blood. And, but again, if it's agreed upon, you got no complaint. It's, but again, I just think this whole, but I guess that's the world we live in, right? If I go online and I say I agree with Mikey Whipwreck on something and somebody else disagrees with Mikey Whipwreck, then I get trolled, Mikey gets trolled, and it's crazy. And the insane world we live in today. Yeah, right.
Well, I think a takeaway is for sure that Cody is trying to get over with that Japanese audience, that he's tough, he's taking real shots, and, they're all about that fighting spirit. And my second takeaway was I had a sheet of paper of guys that I never thought Shane would ever mention on the show, and Tiger Conway Jr. was first on that list, so that was a pretty good shocker.
Well, look, as far as Cody goes, I've been a big fan of Cody's for a long time. Watching him go out and in this, not at the latter stage of his career, at the beginning stage of his career, working through this, this Stardust gimmick that, was so beneath, I think, in my opinion, beneath what Dusty Rhodes or anybody in that Rhodes vein, carrying on that torch. And yet he went out there and he did it with a professionalism and executed. I give him credit that when he walked away, I mean, let's face it, there's one company in our industry, for all intents and purposes today. And for him to have walked away and said, I'm willing to go out here and try this instead of continue to put up with that took big cojones. And to me, that gets a lot of respect. So I think Cody he's got his father's charisma, maybe not to the same degree yet, but you can see him coming out of that shadow of being Dustin Rhodes or Goldust's or Dusty's son, where he's really forging his own way in a different vein. And, those are big shoes to fill, so none of us can, at least I can't, try to explain in first person account as to what that would take. But, like you said, JP, if that's what he's doing is working to get over that crowd, and I'm sure that's what it is, then, the shoot back. In this business, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if he and Glenn Gilberti had set this up before and took it off that way.
Yeah, really.
But, it is what it is, and, the nature of the business today.
Did either one of you ever wrestle Disco?
Oh, I did, yeah. Several times, yeah.
Once, and it was plenty. There you go, Twitter. There you go. Ahead. Now light it up. Let me troll me now. Troll me now.
Here it comes.
No, it was fun. We got. I worked with him once on a Thunder, and it was I wasn't booked. He wasn't booked, and then he was booked against somebody else. Then somebody else didn't show up, and then we had a 5-minute match. Then we had a 2-minute match, and then we get out there, and then we had to go through. Then we had to go through a commercial break, and it was just like Jesus. But it was fun, good little match. And then the highlight for me was we're walking back, through the tunnel, and Ric Flair says, "That was a hell of a match, guys." And Flair, pat me on the shoulder. So I'm like, okay, I'll take it.
Wasn't that the best in WCW?
Chartbuster.
In WCW, you get that. Okay, you guys got 8 minutes, 12 minutes, 18 minutes, whatever. And then as you got closer and closer to the match, it would go cut in half. So it was 18, it was now 9. And then cut in half again, 4.5. And then cut in half again, so now you have 2 1/4. and then like your opponent would go to the ring, and as you're playing your music, Jimmy Hart would and say, "You have 35 seconds." So, like, what the hell? Just cut the match out, for God's sakes. They don't even walk out there for it. Jesus.
That was like my first night in WCW. I was going up, I was losing. I was going up, I was losing. 15 minutes, 3 minutes. 20 minutes, 6 minutes. I was like, oh God.
So all the stuff you set up beforehand, that 6 hours of talking you did, just got thrown out the window.
It did. What a waste. Just myself, I would have done.